T4 is at the low end, the TSH is at the high end, and you can play with it a little bit and keep them more toward the lower end of the TSH for the as the lower end of normal. Then I certainly think that might help the patient a little bit. We do see people using it for weight loss, and that's just a no-no. So you don't want to do that. And we have that happening, for the listeners. We're on the border of Mexico and El Paso. So we certainly have places in Juarez and Mexico that will give out thyroid hormone for weight loss and frequently not tell the patient that's what they're on. Yeah. And they end up in our clinics hyperthyroid, and then we track back and find out it's being used as a weight loss agent, and it causes a lot of problems for them.
Let me ask you a question that comes now all the time from the lab people. What the biotin component is of these lab tests, what role they're playing, and what do we need to know about biotin and thyroid disease?
I have not ordered so many free T4s in my life until the last few years because of biotin. Normally, we rely upon our TSH, and it's a fantastic test. It's very sensitive, very specific, and I really didn't have a need as for ordering T3 levels and T4 levels because you really could learn everything you wanted from the TSH in most patients, not in all. However, biotin has become like the go-to vitamin, and there may be some help with your hair and nails with it. So a lot of people are taking it to improve their hair and nails. It's in almost every B complex now because it's B7. And what has been in multivitamins for years has been maybe a few hundred micrograms of biotin, which is never enough to interfere with lab assays. However, these supplements that people are taking have grams of biotin in it. And the problem is biotin is one of the reagents that is used in the assay machine that runs our labs. And it's not just my TSH that's a problem. It's everything. It's the troponins, it's the PTH, the PSA. There's many, many of these labs that are run on these multi-channel machines that use biotin. And it's not consistent. So it depends upon what your assay is. Some of them, the levels are high, some of the levels are low. So most of the time with TSH, it gives you an inappropriately low TSH. Now, it's not anything that it's doing to the patient. It's just inaccuracies with the machine because it can't tell where this biotin is coming from. It's expecting it from its reagent, and it's actually in the patient's serum. So I actually have all these signs hung in all of my clinic rooms that have pictures of biotin, and to remind patients they need to stop it 3 days before they do their labs because it takes about 3 days to get it out of the system. And then they're fine, and the levels will be good. But when we get back these funny looking labs where the free T4 is perfectly normal and the TSH is very low and the patient feels perfectly fine, and then we start talking to them, oh yes, I was taking such and such vitamin and there's biotin in it. So I end up ordering a lot more free T4s, trying to track down, well, what is wrong with this patient and their TSH? And indeed, it was never a problem with the thyroid. It's just a lab assay issue. So very it's important for everyone to ask this because everybody's labs are having the same problem.
Well, Tamas, let me talk to you about your other world, which is directing endocrinology and teaching and overseeing a residency program aspects. Obviously, we've all had a different style forced upon us. Endocrinology, as you said, you do rely on labs. We in GI feel like we have to touch something a bit more. But in general, how do you see the endocrinology patient relationship and maybe the teaching program being modified or changed over the next couple of years here as we adapt to the COVID world?
I think teaching has been the hardest part of it. My patients actually have adapted very well.
Yep.
The patients are loving it because obviously in endocrine, we see a lot of diabetics. And if they don't have diabetes, they're old and have osteoporosis, or I've got them on steroids because they're adrenally insufficient or whatever. So our population is a very high risk population for the COVID, and giving them the opportunity to stay at home so that they don't have to get out and about has been great for them. I'm hoping that obviously our insurance companies will continue to pay for some of these home visits, because particularly for some of these elderly patients, and I've been doing this for 25 years now, so I have a number of patients that are in their 80s or 90s. And my husband actually has quite a few in their hundreds, which I have one guy, I think, that's turning 100 this year. I don't have any other ones that are in the hundreds. But, those people, it's so much nicer for them to be at home, and they don't have to have the family driving them. Many are in wheelchairs, and then just the hassle of trying to get them to clinic, when really I'm mostly doing labs on them.
Right.
There's nothing I'm really examining on many of these people that we couldn't do with a once or twice a year visit, particularly with the thyroid. It's not going to change that much over the course of a year. And I can't tell you how many of these platforms I have on my phone. Whatever it'll work with the patient. I even, if they've got an Apple phone, we'll just FaceTime sometimes, because a lot of these platforms are very hard for these older patients to do. But, most of them can FaceTime with their grandkids. So, I'll just FaceTime them. And you can see a lot. You can really look at a thyroid. You can have them, if it's a diabetic, you can have them point that camera at their feet. We can really look. Do you have any lesions on your feet? Have you looked at your feet anytime recently? So we've been very lucky to be able to do a lot of stuff over the phone with the patients. And many of our diabetics do have continuous glucose monitors, which we can look at online now. They have insulin pumps. We've gotten a lot of them to actually learn how to download their own pumps, which we've struggled with for years, but they've never bothered to learn how to do it because we do it for them in clinic. So now they're actually learning their pumps much better. So there's been a lot of good things about that. I still think that your over the phone is a lot less personal. I think we've lost a lot of the the interpersonal relationship with the patient when we're trying to do it over the phone, particularly if we can't get the video part going, because some of the patients just don't have either the capability to do it, or they don't have the internet connection and they just can't do it. So I think we need to be in clinic as soon as we can get back in clinic, just to have that better patient-doctor relationship going. But I think it'd be nice to continue it so that at least in some of these patients, once or twice a year, we can save them that trip to the doctor when it really isn't necessary. Particularly if you've got, some of these people have 5 different doctors they see. Right. If you've got a good primary care doc, am I really adding something to a guy's exam that just saw the patient a month ago? Probably not. So I think there's a lot of things that we can continue with the patient. With the residents and the students, I think we've lost a lot for those guys, because trying to do this over the phone with them, I mean, they're not getting that clinic experience with you. How do you examine the patient? How do you approach that thyroid exam in people that haven't, done a thyroid exam? How do you talk to this patient about losing weight that, nobody wants to work on their diet and exercise? And, how do you convince people to do something they don't want to do? And, you have to kind of learn your way around that. What's your approach to doing that? And if they never see us do it, it's very hard for them. I think the lectures, doing a noon lecture that many of the programs have, which is really just, here's a topic, I'm going to talk about it. Right. I think we do okay with those, but even those I don't feel like are as interesting. It's very hard to sit on these Zoom things and have the same with the patient interaction. You don't have that interaction with the audience. So
no, you have to motivate
it's not
yourself.
As fun.
Yeah, no question. You've got to motivate yourself to be excited and involved when you give the talk as well.
Yeah, it's hard. You don't have that feedback, and you're trying to. Half of them don't have their cameras on, or probably more than half, because they're still in their jammies. If they're not doing something that day, particularly for the students, not so much the residents, they're seeing patients with us and whatever, but the students frequently are home. And so they don't have the cameras on. So it's just a different style of interaction that's not as fun for either side, I don't think.
Well, Dr. Bright, all I can say on behalf of the audience, certainly myself, I've learned a lot. Extremely informative. Thank you for the time, and thank you for the education. We very much appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. It was a lot of fun, and I hope it was informative for everyone.
Certainly was. And so, colleagues, This podcast will be officially available in the next 24 hours. Please benefit from it and maybe connect up with some of the other podcasts we've done over the last 12 months. And so I'll say adios for now and look forward to another podcast in February. Good afternoon again. A sincere thanks to Dr. Bride for an outstanding discussion. Bye-bye.